So Matt Hancock's been a member of the UK Parliament since 2010, led various arms of the government throughout his time, including Secretary of State for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. In April, he welcomed Binance CEO CZ to the Houses of Parliament, managed to get a selfie with him. And CZ said that Matt is an expert in crypto with a forward-thinking mindset, pushing forward crypto adoption. And Matt himself said he stated that the UK needs to embrace crypto or be left behind. And personally, I couldn't agree more. We were once the financial center of the world, and in my view, if we want to be again, we need to adopt crypto. And with that said, I would like to welcome Matt to the stage.
Thanks very much for that intro, and thanks very much for the invite to this conference. And it's a fantastic moment to be having this conference, and I'm incredibly grateful to be invited. And the reason is this, that for me, this is an absolutely critical time for the UK in particular, in terms of getting right our attitude to digital assets, to crypto, and to the underlying blockchain technology on which they're built. And the reason I wanted to come to see you today is because I need your help in making this argument. So over the last year or so, having had a long career on the edges of fintech, having worked at the Bank of England, having been in charge of policy, digital policy within government, I then had 3 years out as health secretary, and I've come back now to look at what is happening and how we can build our future prosperity as a country. And I have a fervent belief that we only build a prosperous country if we allow people who want to build the future to get on and build it. And when I came out of government, having been health secretary, and looked around at the area that I'd spent most of my career looking at and responsible for policy for, I found that there were barriers. There were barriers in place. There wasn't the enthusiasm certainly within government and regulators, that there needs to be to build the future. But there was a fantastic market, a huge amount of people who were driving this agenda hard, but barriers were being put in their place. Or more accurately, barriers were being put in your place. And so I started speaking up for crypto. The first time that I spoke up, I went into a debate in Parliament, and I found that every voice was saying, well, I'm not sure about this crypto thing. Can we stop it? Wouldn't it be better if it happened elsewhere? And I just stood up and said, we have to embrace the future. And it was, you just heard the quote back then. And that went viral. The next thing that happened to me, I knew that I'd hit a chord because I was crossing the road on Westminster Bridge outside Parliament, and there was a cyclist who was, coming rapidly towards me, and he clocked me and clocked who I was, and he stared at me and took his hand off the handlebar and looked at me like this. And I thought, oh yeah, this could go one way or the other. And he said, as he got closer, he said, Hancock, sort out crypto. And at that point, I knew that somebody had noticed. And so since then, I've been trying to make the argument. And politics has been a turbulent place over the last year. And obviously, over the last couple of weeks, it's been a turbulent place. The Queen, though, was a supporter of digital assets. Did you know that? She supported the British Blockchain Association, and she put out a supportive statement a couple of years ago. Well, now the key is to use the opportunity of a new government here to have a fresh start in the attitude and approach to digital assets, to cryptocurrencies, and to the use of the underlying blockchain technology. And I come to report good news. I was called into the Treasury this week by the new Chancellor. He said, I know that you've been talking about this stuff. We know that we've got to get on with it. I want to move as fast as we reasonably can, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear from the industry. And so I had a very good conversation. The door is undoubtedly open to making sure that the UK is the place to build. I'm glad I brought my mum along for a bit of cheering. The door is open to making the UK the best place to build. And I'm going to go through, this is why I've got this thing, I'm going to go through a couple of areas where I think we need to make progress. But there's two things that underpin what needs to happen here. The first is that we cannot do it without you. There is no way that we can build an environment, a regime, an ecosystem for digital assets unless we hear from you about what is needed. What are the barriers to you growing your business here? For those in international businesses, which is most, what are the barriers to you getting investment here? You know, we know that we have huge, long-term, substantial benefits of being in the UK, right? We have the English legal system, which has underpinned international finance for decades. But it hasn't done that on its own by accident. It's done it because it's been designed to be a progressive, liberal, essentially open system on which you can base the legals for financial instruments. We know that we have a huge amount of talent here. And we have in London in particular the combination of digital capability and finance capability that means that you can build disruption. We have an attitude which is that we do not actively look to support the incumbents, we actively look to support the disruptors, because that's how the future of prosperity is built. And we are open to trading with the world, which is important, because one of my arguments at the political level is we've got to get on with this, because if we don't do it here, it'll just happen elsewhere. You can't stop this train, so let's get on it. So that's the first thing. We need you. And the second thing is that we need to move fast. We need to move with urgency, right? I hear enough from you to know that there are decisions being made now about what should be made where, what should be built where. There are companies that should be growing but are spending too much time with a wet towel over their head working on regulations that weren't designed for them and in fact were designed before the technology they're working on was even a concept. There are far too many people having to spend their time negotiating the world that I inhabit and the pace at which the world of government and regulators works instead of getting on and building. So the second thing, which is absolutely critical, is urgency. So given that we need you and we need engagement to get this right, and given that there is urgency, what should we do? So my model, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, my model is that we need to build in the UK the playbook that we have used in the past to get new businesses, new industries to grow from here. So in the 80s, with the Eurobond market, the swaps market, and other financial instruments essentially built around derivatives, we not only built an infrastructure, we actively went out around the world and said, do business in the UK. It is the best place to build a business. In the 90s, we did the same with asset-backed markets, and in particular, the repo market. The authorities lent in. And they had an attitude which is you get on with it. And so long as you're not harming anybody else in the process, then you get on with it. And by the way, a bit of market competition and some firms failing is not a bad thing. That is how the system works and that's how we build. So we've got a model of how we can get this right from the past. What do we need to do right now? This is when I have to look at my notes. To make sure I get the details right. Okay, the first thing is making sure that when financial products are built, the regulatory system that is in place, the framework, not only, well, I'll put it this way, has clarity. Because often what people are looking for is simply the answer to the question so they can get on and build. So the first thing I want to talk about is clarity. Here, I think the Swiss have got it right, where the Swiss have looked at their existing rule book and they've matched it over and they've said, these are the principles that apply to traditional assets. This is what your particular new technology looks like. This is, under the existing rule book, this is what maps across. So having that clarity and having an answer to the question, what are the guide rails, what is the rule book, that is step one. But for me, that is not enough, because that implies that you take the existing rule book and you apply it to crypto. But we don't want to apply the existing rule book to crypto. We want you to be able to build with far fewer barriers in the way. So the second thing we need to do is to make sure that the regime is far more liberal. Now, for me, a high-quality market operates when you have high-quality information and you allow failure, but everybody knows the rules of the game. So, for instance, I'd be frankly tougher on advertising, right? The way to protect consumers is not to increase financial exclusion by telling them they can't invest in something. That is outrageous. Why should you allow rich people to invest in crypto, but not people who don't have much in their bank account? Okay, well, both of you are going to get a star afterwards. This is going well, isn't it? So I'm glad two people agree with that point, but I think it's important, right? Caveat emptor, let people invest their own money. But the crucial piece to that is getting the information right, making sure the information is fair. And if that means warnings, fine. Actually, when the FCA recently, 6 months or so ago, said, if you invest in crypto, be prepared to lose your shirt, I thought that was a good thing, because that gives them the permission to then allow people to make investments of their own, knowing that, like with equities and a whole series of other investments, you may lose everything. There's a load of businesses that go bust every year that you can invest all your life savings in. It's just unwise to do so. So on the principle of caveat emptor, we need to remove a whole load of the restrictions on investment that are in place. So that's the second thing, clarity, a clearer, simpler rule book. And then the third thing is execution of regulation. I cannot tell you how many times I've been approached by a company that's doing something totally reasonable. It might be new, it might be novel, it might be interesting, and they have been blocked by the FCA from doing it. There have been investigations launched that didn't need to be launched, and there have been huge barriers put in place to people getting licenses to practice here in the UK. The fact it's almost impossible to get a bank account if you say that you're in crypto is ridiculous. These things come from the execution of regulation in practice. We've got to make it faster, smarter, and far more out of your way so that you can build. But for this, I need your help as well. Because then when the regulator allows a load of stuff to happen and some of it goes wrong, none of us have got to point our finger at them. It is not the regulator's fault if a business goes bust. It, in fact, is a sign of health in the market. And this brings me to my final point that I'm going to end on. My final point is this. Over the past 6 months, we have had a tough time in the markets in crypto. I choose not to invest in crypto at all. And the reason I do that is so that when journalists ask me, I can say, I don't invest in crypto. I'm not doing this off my own book. It gives me the great advantage when I come to conferences like this, that I'm the only person who hasn't lost loads of money in the last few months as well. I can't even remember the point I was going to make, but I wanted to get that joke in there. But the critical thing about, this is the point, the critical thing about the experience of the last 6 months is I think the market turbulence has shown the resilience of digital assets, not the flaws in digital assets. Sure, it's shaken out some of the weaker players. Sure, we've all realized that when you promise somebody that you'll get one-to-one back in a stable coin, then you need to be absolutely certain that you can pay that one-to-one back. Otherwise, it's not a stable coin at all. That's an age-old principle of finance, but it's as true in digital assets as it is in any other. But of course, there are lessons, individual lessons, that have been learned, and the market is maturing. But mark my words, this last 6 months has shown that digital assets are here to stay. They're a resilient, growing, and increasingly important part of the infrastructure in the UK and around the world. Anybody who thinks that they're going away is completely wrong. The finance sector will be disrupted as aggressively as every other sector has over the last decade. Whether it's the media with the revolution through social media, whether it's retail and the online buying revolution, finance will be disrupted as much as any other. And you are in the vanguard. You are the disruptors who are making this happen. And it will lead to a better, more decentralized, more faithful, and I hope more human finance sector in the future. We have to be on the side of the future. Not only you who are building, but the country as a whole. If we don't get this right, others will simply go straight past us in the fast lane. It is happening. It is resilient. It is going to revolutionize finance, large and small. You are making it happen. I am your voice. I need your help in making sure that voice is heard loud and clear. When I say things that are wrong, I want you to tell me about that as well. But let's get out there and let's make it happen. The door is open. We've got to charge through it together. Thank you very much. So in the spirit of telling me where I've got things wrong, the organisers have kindly suggested that there might be time for 2 or 3 questions. There's a roving mic that's going around. So if you've got a question, stick up your hand. There's a gentleman here in the blue shirt, and then the guy in the, is that a Hawaiian type shirt? You know, It's from Dubai. Okay. We need to eat their lunch as well.
Thank you very much, Matt. That was really interesting. You talked about a few things: changes in potential legislation, changes in regulation. What would be the top 3 things? What were the first few steps that we should be taking on either side of that legislative debate or the regulatory debate?
Yeah, okay, great. So the number one thing I'd say is actual regulatory practice on the ground, right? Within the existing framework, we need regulators to be front foot, positive, open, risk on, instead of the opposite of all those things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think we should, is that the government and regulators should publish clarity over how the existing rules translate into crypto. The third thing, which will take a bit longer, is that we need a new rule book that is simplified and removes a whole load of the constraints that aren't necessary in a digital asset world. That is a much more sophisticated piece of work. That will need legislation, but there's a bill going through Parliament right now that enables it, and that bill, called the Financial Services and Markets Bill, that needs strengthening during its passage of Parliament, through Parliament. So they're the first 3 things that I'd do, but actually before any of them, what I'd do is I'd want to know the answers to those questions from everybody in this room. And it's only by listening to you that I can properly articulate what you need when I'm having these conversations with policymakers. Sir? Yeah. It's coming. You missed the bit where he's nice about my speech, but anyway.
Thank you for the great speech. Yeah. So my question is, would UK government play a more significant role in the Web3 space, as, let's say, US does right now, as Colorado decided to take the taxes in Bitcoin just recently, and some other deeds that could be performed? Or is it something that in this space is planned already?
Yeah, great question. So look, I'm up for symbolic positive things that the government themselves can do, like taking payments in cryptocurrency. The government has done some of this. You know, I first got involved in using blockchain in government in 2016 when we put international aid contracts onto blockchain for transparency purposes, so that you could see where the cash goes all the way. This was fiat cash, but you could see through the smart contracts. You didn't just give it to the government of Malawi, but then you followed it down to the farmer, for example. And so the government should be doing the symbolic, eating its own dog food, so to speak, using the technology, absolutely. But I would be cautious about how far the government gets into actually delivering the technology, right? I'm cautious on CBDCs. I mean, what I want is a flourishing market for high-quality stablecoins based in the UK, probably in all currencies, fiat and crypto. And I want a regime that allows for that and supports that. I don't necessarily want. I'm not spectacularly against it either, but this is not what government does well. And believe you me, having driven some tech projects in government, I'd far rather you did it. Yes, sir, on the front row, and then the lady in the green jacket.
Hello, Roshi Sharma. I manage a crypto-focused legal practice called LawBeam. Mr. Hancock, that was a superb speech. That was really, really excellent. My question to you is, how can we feed back to you? You've asked us as an industry, how can we gain access to you or your office?
Okay, so my email address is on the internet, although be very careful when you put my name into the internet, all sorts of stuff comes up. Did I just say that out loud? Yeah. Sorry, that was what I was supposed to be thinking at that point. But anyway, but I'm also supporting and co-founding an organization called the Digital Economy Institute, the DEI, which we just put out a paper about stablecoins, actually. The aim of the DEI is to be a pro-digital asset campaigning think tank that allows people like me who want to make these arguments, and especially politicians who may be instinctively supportive but may not have the experience, the support to be able to make these arguments. So by all means, email me directly, but the DEI is the institution that I use as my think tank, and has done some. It's been going for about 6 months. It's doing some really good work. Final question. No, we'll take two more. The lady in green and then the lady in the black t-shirt over there.
Great to meet you, Matt. My background's actually medicine, so I'm a mental health medically trained doctor, and I'm very into Web3, and particularly getting Web3 into the mental health space. When I talk to people about mental health, everyone can relate. As soon as I talk a bit more about crypto, obviously that sort of negative sort of press and publicity comes into it. How much do you think the sort of outreach, and particularly with your influence, is going to impact on how we get through that message to people in future?
Yeah, okay, well, look, it's a great question and a bit broader than the pure digital asset space, which I've mostly been speaking about. I think it's incredibly important, especially because of what we learned during Web 2 about the impact, and, Millie Dowler's the inquiry is currently, in the news at the moment. I'd say two things. The first is there's a broader piece about getting the UK to love crypto, and I think we are making progress there. Actually, our biggest ally has been Vladimir Zelensky. When he said, I need crypto to be able to get cash in fast to support the war effort, he did more than anybody else to help people like me to make the positive argument. But there's a broader Web3 point, and I think we need to learn about what went badly in Web 2. But we also need to make sure that Web3, the metaverse, the broader revolution that's going on is open, transparent, based on open standards, and not a walled garden from one company. And I think that there is a danger that one company in particular will try to own the whole space and use the argument, especially child safety type arguments, to say, well, here's a protected space. The danger is they become the AOL of Web3, and that would be a disaster. That would kill it. And they've already sunk billions, tens of billions of dollars into this. So I think we have to be careful to get the online space safe, but not do that in a way that kills its openness and decentralized nature. The final question.
Thank you. You spoke a lot about regulation, which is really interesting. Thank you for that. But as I'm sure you're aware, another key concern for crypto businesses is tax.
Yes, I knew somebody would raise it.
And so many businesses are making their decisions about where to base themselves
Yes.
based on tax regimes.
Yes.
And that's why places like Dubai are flourishing.
Yes.
And obviously it's difficult to compete with the kind of tax rates they have over there. So do you have any thoughts on whether a special tax regime could be brought in for
Yes.
crypto and crypto-based businesses?
Yes, so I should have mentioned tax. If I'd actually read the speech in my pocket, I would have, tax was like 0.7 or something, but I thought it would be far better to just tell you what I really think. Of course tax is important, and it's, again, it's about clarity, it's about how the existing rules work, and then it's about having a set of rules that are specifically designed for crypto. My view is that HMRC have so far taken a revenue maximizing approach based on the existing rule book and applying it in a sledgehammer way. What we need to do is take a growth maximizing view where revenues in the future will be far greater if we support the growth of digital assets industry here in the UK. If you're looking for an example of where there is a dynamic impact of tax rates, i.e. low tax rates lead to higher future revenues, this is it. And so we need to have a much, much smarter and lower tax regime. It is an important argument. People, to be honest with you, people say to me, the regulatory barriers are the bigger ones, but but the tax argument is important, and there are some individual, particularly there's some individual projects that get caught in an unintended consequence of some tax law dreamt up 20 years ago, and that needs to be sorted. And HMRC needs to take a proactive, open, pro-growth policy attitude rather than just a pure revenue maximizing attitude within the existing rule book. So thank you very much for that piece of feedback. That's exactly what the sorts of things, questions I want to get, thoughts I want to hear. If you've got specifics on tax changes that you want to recommend, then do get in touch, and I'd be very happy to look at that. I hope you don't have to talk about regulation for the rest of the conference. I hope you can talk about more exciting things like actually building stuff. And I am very grateful for your support, but I'm here because I need your views. I need you to tell me what I need to do to make your life easier so that we can grow crypto, make the UK love crypto, and make sure that the digital assets ecosystem in the UK is the strongest in the world, because that is what I want to do. Thank you very much indeed.